Help him! Call an ambulance now!
We've been ordered not to intervene here.
I pulled up to find my 11-year-old son face down on concrete, handcuffed, nose bleeding. A man in tactical vest stood over him, and 30 feet away, 2 police officers sat in their patrol car, watching. I ran to Isaiah, dropped to my knees. "Help him! Call an ambulance!" One officer rolled down his window. "Sir, we've been ordered not to intervene in HOA security matters." That's when I recognized what I was seeing. Federal civil rights violation, color of law conspiracy, police complicity in assault on a minor. Because I spent 12 years investigating exactly this for the FBI, and they just triggered federal jurisdiction. If you've ever watched authority figures betray your child while claiming they're following orders, then hit subscribe now. I'm Marcus Reeves, former FBI Civil Rights Division investigator. I've built federal cases against corrupt police departments in 7 cities, testified before grand juries on pattern and practice violations, know exactly what happens when local police become complicit in civil rights abuses. The man in the tactical vest, later identified as Jake Morrison, had no idea who he'd just assaulted. The officers watching had no idea their stand-down order was being committed by someone who knows that ordered not to intervene becomes evidence in a DOJ lawsuit. But I need you to understand why this violation cut so deep, why my son Isaiah matters beyond just another HOA overreach story. My wife Keisha died 2 years ago, lupus complications. She spent her entire life fighting for police accountability, testifying at city council meetings about excessive force, organizing community oversight boards, demanding that officers protect all citizens equally, regardless of neighborhood or income. She believed the system could change, believed that enough pressure, enough voices, enough documentation would force reform. The skateboard Isaiah was riding, Keisha bought it for his 9th birthday, taught him to ride in the driveway while she was still strong enough to run alongside him, made him promise he'd keep skating after she was gone, said it represented freedom, childhood, joy she wanted him to never lose. Now that skateboard was on the ground 10 feet away, confiscated as contraband. And Isaiah, the son Keisha died believing would grow up in a better world, was face down on concrete with a broken nose and concussion, while 2 police officers followed orders to do nothing. The tactical vest man spoke into his radio. Subject secured, requesting supervisor approval for juvenile detention. Supervisor approval for what? I kept my voice level. Professional. What violation? Skateboarding on HOA property. Failure to comply with security directives, resisting enforcement. This is a public sidewalk, city property. Your HOA has no jurisdiction here. Heritage Hills Public Safety Task Force has coordinated authority with Metro PD. We handle all violations within community boundaries. There it was. Coordinated authority. The exact phrase that triggers federal investigation when private security claims police backing. Isaiah was crying, trying to breathe through blood from his broken nose. 11 years old, handcuffed on concrete, while the officers who were supposed to protect him sat in their car following orders. I pulled out my phone, started recording, documented everything. Isaiah's injuries, the officers in their patrol car, the man in tactical vest claiming police authority. I'm Marcus Reeves, former FBI Civil Rights Division. This is my son, Isaiah Reeves, 11 years old, assaulted by private HOA security while police officers watched and refused to intervene. I turned the camera to the patrol car. Officers, for the record, you're stating you were ordered not to help this child? The officer looked uncomfortable, glanced at his partner. We're following departmental directives regarding HOA coordination. Departmental directives that supersede your duty to protect minors from assault, I kept recording. You're aware that creates federal liability under Section 1983? His face went pale. Patricia Donovan's voice came over the security radio. Jake, situation status? Subject's father is here, causing interference. Remind him that Heritage Hills Security operates under official police coordination. Captain Donovan personally approved our enforcement protocols. Captain Donovan, the third in command at Metro PD. The man who'd ordered these officers to stand down. Also, Patricia Donovan's husband, the HOA president's direct line to police power. I looked at my son bleeding on concrete, at the police officers who'd watched it happen, at the corruption network that thought marriage and money made them untouchable. They had no idea I'd spent 12 years dismantling exactly these systems, that I knew which federal agencies to call, that police HOA corruption was my specialty. Keisha had died fighting for accountability. Now our son was the victim that would finally trigger it. The paramedics arrived 8 minutes later. 8 minutes Isaiah spent handcuffed on concrete while Jake Morrison stood over him and 2 police officers sat in their car. The EMTs uncuffed him immediately. Who put handcuffs on an 11-year-old? The lead paramedic's voice was tight with controlled anger. HOA security, I said. The officers were ordered not to intervene. She looked at the patrol car, at the officer still sitting there. Her jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Just focused on Isaiah. Broken nose, possible concussion, separated shoulder from the slam onto concrete. They immobilized his neck as a precaution. Dad, it hurts. Isaiah's voice was small, scared. The voice of a child who'd lost his mother 2 years ago and was now learning that adults who were supposed to protect him could choose not to. I know, buddy. They're going to help you. At University Hospital's ER, Dr. Chen confirmed the damage. Nasal fracture, requiring surgical repair. Grade 2 concussion, separated left shoulder. Facial contusions and abrasions consistent with being slammed face first onto concrete. She looked at me. Mr. Reeves, this level of force on a child, I'm required to report this to Child Protective Services. Good. Document everything. Photos, x-rays, every injury. Because in federal civil rights cases, medical documentation becomes evidence. Proof of excessive force. Proof that a child suffered constitutional violations while police watched. While Isaiah was in imaging, I went to Metro PD headquarters, filed an official police report against Jake Morrison for assault. The desk sergeant took my information with barely concealed disinterest. HOA security matter. You'll need to file a complaint with the HOA board first. This happened on a public sidewalk. City property. That's your jurisdiction. Sir, Heritage Hills has a coordination agreement with the department. Internal HOA enforcement is handled through their security protocols. My son has a broken nose and concussion from being slammed onto concrete by an unlicensed security guard. That's assault and battery, regardless of any coordination agreement. The sergeant's expression didn't change. I'll file the report. Someone will follow up if warranted. The report disappeared into the system. No detective assigned. No follow-up call. Just bureaucratic silence. That evening, while Isaiah slept fitfully in his hospital bed, Patricia Donovan sent me a formal violation notice. Heritage Hills Estates. Violation notice. Isaiah Reeves is hereby banned from all HOA property for physical assault on Heritage Hills security personnel. Any future trespass will result in immediate detention and criminal charges. Additionally, the Reeves household is fined $2,500 for failure to control minors' aggressive behavior. The HOA president had inverted reality completely. My son, the victim with a broken nose, was now the aggressor. The man who'd slammed him onto concrete was the victim. I called her, tried to keep my voice professional. "Patricia, my son has a concussion and broken nose. Your security guard assaulted him." Mr. Reeves, Jake Morrison used appropriate force to detain a juvenile who was violating HOA regulations and resisting security directives. The former city councilwoman's voice was calm, clinical. "Your son's injuries resulted from his own aggressive actions. He's 11. He was skateboarding on a public sidewalk. Heritage Hills Security operates under Metro PD coordination. Captain Donovan personally oversees our enforcement protocols. If you have concerns about appropriate use of force, take it up with the police department." Captain Donovan. Her husband. The man who'd ordered officers to stand down while Isaiah was assaulted. "Your husband ordered police not to intervene while a child was being slammed onto concrete." My husband ensures efficient coordination between public safety and private security. That's good governance, Mr. Reeves. Perhaps if you'd taught your son to respect authority figures, none of this would have happened. She hung up. I sat in Isaiah's hospital room, watching him sleep with a broken nose and bandaged shoulder. My son who'd lost his mother, who was supposed to grow up in the better world Keisha died believing in. The board chair thought she was protected, thought marriage to a police captain and a coordination agreement made her security force untouchable, thought local police would bury complaints and the system would protect them. She had no idea that police private security corruption was exactly what the FBI Civil Rights Division was designed to dismantle. That coordinated authority between cops and HOA enforcers created federal jurisdiction, that I'd spent 12 years building cases against systems exactly like this. Tomorrow, I'd start making calls to former colleagues, to the FBI field office, to DOJ Civil Rights Division, because Patricia Donovan had made one critical mistake. She'd created a federal case, and I knew exactly how to prosecute it. 3 days after Isaiah came home from the hospital, I went to Metro PD to follow up on my assault report. Found Officer Luis Hernandez in the parking lot, getting into his patrol car. He froze when he saw me, hand on the car door, shoulders tensing like he was bracing for impact. "Officer Hernandez, you were there. You watched Jake Morrison slam my son onto concrete." His hand slipped off the door handle. He stared at his shoes instead of meeting my eyes. I followed orders, sir." "Whose orders?" "Captain Donovan's. He radioed us directly. Said to stand down, let HOA security handle their enforcement." Hernandez's jaw worked. His hands opened and closed at his sides like he didn't know what to do with them. "I'm sorry about your son. I really am. But you did nothing. I have 8 years on the force. A daughter. She's the same age as your son," Iskal's voice cracked. He finally looked up at me, guilt written across every line of his face. "I watched that man slam a kid onto concrete, watched him handcuff an 11-year-old, and I sat in my car because my captain told me to." "Do you have body camera footage?" Hernandez's hands started trembling. "Yes." "Have you submitted it?" "No." He looked around the parking lot like someone might be listening. "Captain Donovan told us to hold all footage related to HOA security actions. Said it's part of the coordination protocol. Internal review before official filing." "Internal review means burying it." "I know." The words came out barely above a whisper. "Mr. Reeves, I know what I saw was wrong. I know I should have intervened. I know I should have submitted that footage. His hands clenched into fists. But if I go against the captain, I'm done. Career over, pension gone, and I've got a kid to support. I studied him, saw the war happening behind his eyes. Conscience versus survival, right versus consequences. How many times has this happened? How many incidents where you were ordered to stand down while HOA security used force? Hernandez looked away, stared at the police station like it held answers. I don't know. A lot. Maybe 50 times over the past 2 years. The captain has this arrangement with his wife. She runs Heritage Hills Security like her personal police force, and we're supposed to defer to them. 50 incidents of excessive force? Not all excessive. Some were just questionable stops, searches without probable cause, detaining people for HOA violations that aren't actually crimes. He wiped his face with both hands. But yeah, some were bad, really bad. Your son wasn't the first kid I watched get hurt. And you reported none of it. I reported the first 3. Got called into the captain's office. He said I was undermining departmental coordination with community partners. Said if I couldn't follow chain of command, maybe I should look for work elsewhere. Hernandez's shoulders sagged. I have a mortgage, a daughter who wants to go to college. I told myself the coordination was legal, that the captain knew what he was doing, that it wasn't my place to question. But you knew it was wrong. Yeah, I knew. He met my eyes again, broken. I watched your son bleed on concrete while I sat 30 feet away in an air-conditioned car. I heard him crying for help, and I did nothing because I was following orders. His voice went hollow. My daughter asked me why I became a cop. I told her it was to help people, to protect people who can't protect themselves. A bitter laugh. Then I watch an 11-year-old get slammed onto concrete, and I sit there like a statue because my captain's married to the HOA president. The footage, can you get it to me? Hernandez's face went white. If the captain finds out, he won't, not from me. Mr. Reeves, you don't understand. Captain Donovan controls everything. Promotions, assignments, internal affairs. If he even suspects I'm talking to you, he trailed off. I understand. I spent 12 years investigating police departments. I know how the system protects itself. I pulled out my card. But I also know that body camera footage becomes federal evidence in civil rights cases. And right now, you're the only person with proof of what really happened. Hernandez took the card. His hand was shaking so badly, he almost dropped it. I have a daughter, Mr. Reeves. I can't risk everything. I understand, but think about this. How many more kids get hurt while you protect your career? He stood there in the parking lot, card in his trembling hand, torn between the cop he'd wanted to be and the one he'd become. I left Hernandez standing in the parking lot and drove home to find another notice from Heritage Hills taped to my door. Final notice. The Reeves household has 48 hours to pay the $20,500 fine for failure to control minors' aggressive behavior. Failure to pay will result in lien filing against property. Additionally, Isaiah Reeves remains banned from all HOA common areas pending behavioral review. Behavioral review. For an 11-year-old with a broken nose and concussion. I went inside to check on Isaiah. Found him on the couch, holding the skateboard his mother had given him, staring at it like he was trying to remember her face. Dad, can I still skate? Not on HOA property. But the sidewalk where it happened, that's not HOA property, right? You said it was public. It is public, but right now, I need you to stay close to home until this gets resolved. Resolved how? I'm working on it. He looked at the skateboard, at the wheels Keisha had helped him choose. Mom would have been really mad about what happened. Yeah, buddy, she would have been furious. She used to say cops were supposed to protect people. That's why she went to all those meetings, to make sure they did their jobs right. Isaiah's voice was quiet, lost. But those cops just watched. They didn't protect me. I had no good answer for that, so I just sat with him until he fell asleep, skateboard still clutched in his hands. That evening, I drove to the HOA office. Found Patricia Donovan at her desk, reviewing what looked like security reports with the satisfied expression of someone checking off accomplished tasks. Mr. Reeves, if you're here about the fine, payment can be made online. Or, my son has a broken nose. Your security guard assaulted him on a public sidewalk, and you're billing me for it. Your son assaulted a Heritage Hills security officer during a lawful enforcement action. Jake Morrison used appropriate force to subdue an aggressive juvenile. The former city councilwoman didn't even look up from her papers. The fine stands. He's 11 years old. Age doesn't excuse violent resistance to authority. She finally met my eyes. Cool. Clinical. Mr. Reeves, Heritage Hills has invested significantly in public safety coordination with Metro PD. Captain Donovan, my husband, personally designed our security protocols. They're legally sound, professionally implemented, and fully supported by the police department. Your husband ordered officers not to help my bleeding child. My husband ensured efficient division of labor between public and private security. That's effective resource management. She pulled out another form. Now, about this behavioral review for Isaiah. The board requires documentation that he's received counseling for aggressive tendencies before we'll consider lifting the ban. Aggressive tendencies? He was skateboarding. He physically resisted a security officer, displayed hostility toward lawful authority, created a public disturbance that required emergency response. Patricia's voice remained maddeningly calm. These are serious behavioral concerns, Mr. Reeves. As HOA president, I have a responsibility to ensure community safety. You have a responsibility that ends at HOA property lines. The sidewalk where Isaiah was assaulted is city property. Heritage Hills Public Safety Task Force operates under coordinated jurisdiction with Metro PD. Our security personnel have authority to enforce community standards throughout the Heritage Hills area, including adjacent public spaces. She slid a document across her desk. This is the official coordination agreement between Heritage Hills and Metro PD, signed by Captain Donovan and approved by City Council. Completely legal. I looked at the agreement. Saw the City Council signature from 3 years ago, when Patricia was still a councilwoman, before she became HOA president. She'd created this arrangement while in public office, used her government position to give her future HOA security force quasi-police authority, then married a police captain who'd enforce it. This coordination agreement, does it include financial compensation? Her expression flickered, just slightly. Heritage Hills pays for enhanced police presence in our community, $15,000 per month for priority patrol services. So, the police department has a financial incentive to support HOA enforcement, even when that enforcement includes slamming children onto concrete. That's a gross mischaracterization. It's a conflict of interest. Cops protecting HOA security because the HOA pays their department's budget. I stood up. And that creates federal liability. The board chair's confidence finally cracked. Federal? Mr. Reeves, this is an HOA matter. This is police corruption enabled by financial arrangements and personal relationships. That's exactly what triggers DOJ intervention. You're overreacting to a simple enforcement incident. Your security guard broke my son's nose while police officers watched on your husband's orders. That's not simple. That's conspiracy to deprive civil rights under color of law. Patricia's jaw tightened. Captain Donovan will not appreciate threats against his department. Then Captain Donovan shouldn't have ordered officers to stand down while a child was being assaulted. I left her sitting at her desk. The coordination agreement still spread in front of her. The tyrant in heels thought marriage and money made her untouchable. Thought a city council signature from 3 years ago gave her security force real authority. She had no idea that federal civil rights law didn't care about coordination agreements or political connections. And I was about to prove it. That night, I sat in my law office with Patricia's coordination agreement, Isaiah's medical records, and my FBI training manual from 12 years of civil rights investigations. Started analyzing this the way I'd analyzed corrupt police departments in 7 cities. Looking for federal jurisdiction triggers, constitutional violations, color of law conspiracies. Found them within 20 minutes. Trigger 1. State action doctrine, private security, becomes subject to constitutional constraints when acting in concert with police. Jake Morrison wasn't just some HOA guard. He was operating under a formal coordination agreement signed by Metro PD. When police ordered officers to stand down and let HOA security handle enforcement, they converted private action into state action. Federal courts had been clear on this since Lugar Vier's Edmondson Oil and Brentwood Academy versus Tennessee. Joint participation between public and private actors. Just constitutional protections apply. Patricia's coordination agreement didn't give her security force authority. It gave the FBI jurisdiction. Trigger 2. Conspiracy under color of law 18. USC. Section 242. Whoever, under color of any law, willfully subjects any person to the deprivation of any rights, privileges, or immunities secured or protected by the Constitution. Captain Donovan's stand-down order while Isaiah was being assaulted. That made police officers active participants in a Fourth Amendment violation, excessive force, witnessed by law enforcement who were ordered not to intervene, federal criminal jurisdiction, mandatory, trigger, 3, financial corruption, creating conflict. The $15,000 monthly payment from Heritage Hills to Metro PD created a perverse incentive structure. Police weren't protecting citizens. They were protecting their department's revenue stream from the HOA. Courts called this financial entanglement. DOJ called it corruption. Either way, it triggered pattern and practice investigation authority. Trigger 4. Pattern of constitutional violations. Hernandez had mentioned 50 incidents over 2 years. 50 times officers were ordered to defer to HOA security. That wasn't isolated misconduct. That was systematic deprivation of civil rights. The FBI Civil Rights Division had authority to investigate police departments showing patterns of constitutional violations. 50 documented incidents was more than enough. I pulled up my contacts. Found FBI Special Agent Dana Williams, my former partner from Civil Rights Division. Sent her a detailed email with attachments. Dana, need federal intervention. Police HOA conspiracy, Georgia. Private security assaulted 11-year-old on public property while officers watched under captain's order to stand down. 50+ similar incidents documented. Financial arrangement. HOA pays PD $15K month. Coordination agreement attached. Medical records attached. Multiple federal violations. Section 242, Section 1983, Pattern and Practice. Captain is HOA President's husband. Request preliminary review for federal investigation. Sent. Then I drafted the federal lawsuit, Reeves v. Donovan, et al., filed in U.S. District Court, Northern District of Georgia. Named defendants, Jake Morrison, individual capacity, excessive force. Patricia Donovan, individual capacity, conspiracy. Captain Robert Donovan, individual capacity, failure to intervene. Metro Police Department, Monell liability, policy, chat, custom. Violations. Heritage Hills HOA, joint participant in constitutional violations. Claims. 42, USC, Section 1983, deprivation of rights under color of law. 4th Amendment, excessive force, unlawful seizure. 14th Amendment, due process violations. Conspiracy to violate civil rights. Monell liability for departmental policies, encouraging rights violations. Relief requested. Compensatory damages for Isaiah's injuries. Punitive damages against individual defendants. Injunctive relief ending HOA police coordination. Attorney's fees. DOJ investigation of pattern and practice violations. The lawsuit would force discovery. Force Patricia and Captain Donovan to produce the coordination agreement, financial records, incident reports from those 50 cases Hernandez mentioned. Force them to testify under oath about their arrangement. But more importantly, filing in federal court meant federal judges, federal jurisdiction, no local influence, no political connections that mattered. Patricia thought marriage to a police captain protected her. Thought a coordination agreement legitimized her security force. Thought $15,000 monthly payments bought her police support. She didn't understand that every element she believed made her powerful. The marriage, the coordination, the financial arrangement was exactly what triggered federal civil rights jurisdiction. My phone buzzed. Email from Dana Williams. Marcus, preliminary review shows federal interest. Forwarding to DOJ civil rights. We'll call tomorrow. This is bad, in a good way. Captain ordering stand down during assault on minor, that's prosecutable. Financial arrangement between PD and HOA, that's corruption investigation. Pattern of 50 incidents, that's consent decree territory. You just handed us a case. I looked at Isaiah's medical records, at the photo of him handcuffed on concrete, at the coordination agreement Patricia had shown me so confidently. The former city councilwoman thought she'd built a legal framework for her security force. She'd actually built a federal case against herself, her husband, and an entire police department. And I'd spent 12 years learning exactly how to prosecute it. Dana Williams called the next morning while I was taking Isaiah to his follow-up appointment with Dr. Chen. Marcus, DOJ Civil Rights wants a full briefing. Pattern of police HOA coordination resulting in constitutional violations. That's exactly what we investigate. Can you be in D.C. next week? I have an 11-year-old recovering from a broken nose. Bring him. DOJ needs to see the victim. Humanize this. Dana's voice was all business, the same tone she'd used when we investigated police departments together. Marcus, this case is bigger than Isaiah. If the captain's ordering officers to defer to HOA security in 50 documented incidents, we're looking at systematic civil rights violations affecting 850 families. I know. Do you, because going federal against a police captain married to an HOA president, they'll come after you hard. Personal, professional, they'll use every connection they have. I looked at Isaiah in the passenger seat, his face still bruised, nose splinted, shoulder in a sling. 12 days since the assault, and he still flinched whenever we passed anyone in uniform. They already came after my son. What else can they do? Dr. Chen confirmed Isaiah's nose was healing, but would need surgical revision in 6 months. The concussion symptoms, headaches, dizziness, light sensitivity, would take weeks to fully resolve. The separated shoulder required physical therapy. Mr. Reeves, the psychological impact concerns me more than the physical injuries. Dr. Chen's expression was serious. Isaiah's showing signs of trauma response, hypervigilance around authority figures, anxiety about going outside, nightmares. He's 11. A man in a tactical vest slammed him onto concrete while police officers watched. Of course he's traumatized. I'm recommending therapy. And I'm documenting all of this: physical injuries, psychological trauma, ongoing symptoms. Because this level of harm to a child, she trailed off. Someone needs to be held accountable. They will be, federally. That evening, Isaiah sat on our couch staring at his skateboard, the one Keisha had bought him, the one he hadn't touched since the assault. Dad, are you really suing the police? Yes. Will they be mad at us? Probably. Will they hurt us? I sat beside him. No, buddy, they won't. Because we're not just suing locally, we're going federal, FBI, Department of Justice. When federal agencies investigate, local police can't retaliate without making everything worse for themselves. But the captain, he's married to the HOA lady. He controls the police here. He controls Metro PD. He doesn't control the FBI. I put my arm around his shoulders carefully, mindful of his injury. Isaiah, do you remember what your mom used to say about police accountability? That cops are supposed to protect everyone, not just people they like. Right. And when cops fail to do that, there are higher authorities who make them answer for it. I showed him the federal lawsuit on my laptop. This is how we make sure what happened to you doesn't happen to other kids. Will it work? Yes. Because the HOA president made a mistake. She thought coordinating with police gave her security force real authority. But what she actually did was create federal jurisdiction. I simplified it for him. She thought she was protected. She wasn't. She was just building evidence against herself. Isaiah was quiet for a moment. Then, Mom would want you to do this, even if it's scary. Yeah, she would, because she always said standing up to bad cops was worth it, even when it was hard. Keisha had said that, at city council meetings, at community forums, while testifying about police misconduct. She'd believed the system could change if enough people demanded accountability. She'd died before seeing it happen. But maybe Isaiah's case, maybe federal intervention in Heritage Hills, could be part of that change she'd fought for. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Mr. Reeves, this is Officer Hernandez. I've been thinking about what you said, about how many more kids get hurt while I protect my career. I have something for you. Can we meet? The body camera footage, the evidence that could turn this from my word against theirs into federal prosecution. I looked at Isaiah, at my son who'd lost his mother, and then learned that cops could watch him get hurt and do nothing. We're going to D.C. next week to meet with the Department of Justice. What do I do there? Tell them what happened. Show them your injuries. Help them understand why this matters. This changed everything. Federal investigation, DOJ involvement, Officer Hernandez's conscience finally overcoming his fear. The pieces were falling into place. The tyrant in heels thought she'd built an untouchable system through marriage and money. She'd actually triggered the one thing she couldn't control, federal civil rights enforcement, and it was about to dismantle everything she'd created. I met Officer Hernandez at a coffee shop 15 miles outside Heritage Hills. He arrived in civilian clothes, looking over his shoulder like he expected Captain Donovan to appear. He sat across from me, hands wrapped around a coffee cup he hadn't touched. Knuckles white. Jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle working. "I've been thinking about my daughter." His voice was barely audible. "About what I'd do if someone hurt her and cops just watched." "Officer Hernandez." "Luis, I'm not here as a cop." He pulled a flash drive from his pocket, set it on the table between us like evidence at a crime scene. Body camera footage from me and Officer Chen, the entire assault, the radio order from Captain Donovan, everything. I looked at the flash drive. "If the captain finds out, he'll destroy me. I know." Luis's hand started shaking. "I've got 8 years on the force. Pension. My daughter needs braces, college fund. Everything I've worked for goes away if I do this." "Then why are you here?" "Because I can't sleep. Because every time I close my eyes, I see your son's face when he realized we weren't going to help him." His voice cracked. "He was crying for us. A kid. And we sat there because my captain, who's married to the HOA president, told us to stand down." He finally looked at me, eyes red, exhausted. "I became a cop to help people, to protect people. And I've spent 2 years watching Heritage Hills security hurt residents while we do nothing because the captain says so." "How many incidents?" Luis pulled out a notebook, opened to pages of handwritten entries, dates, locations, names. 53 documented in this notebook, but there are more I didn't write down. Times I was told to look the other way when HOA security conducted questionable stops, searches without probable cause, detentions that lasted hours for HOA violations that aren't even crimes. He pushed the notebook across the table. "The Rodriguez family. HOA security searched their garage without consent, looking for unauthorized storage. We were called for backup. Captain told us to support HOA enforcement operations. They found nothing illegal, but the family was fined $1,500 anyway." "When was this?" 6 months ago. Mrs. Rodriguez tried to file a complaint. It disappeared." Luis flipped pages. "The Kim family. Their 15-year-old was detained for 2 hours at the community center for skateboarding in unauthorized areas. HOA security handcuffed him, made him sit in a room while they called his parents to come pay a fine. We were there, did nothing. On the captain's orders? Always on the captain's orders. He has this phrase: Heritage Hills Security has coordinated jurisdiction. Support their operations." Luis's jaw tightened. "But we're not supporting security operations. We're enabling constitutional violations because the HOA pays our department $15,000 a month and the captain's wife runs it." I looked at the notebook. 53 incidents documented. "This is systematic deprivation of civil rights." I know what it is." He wiped his face with both hands. "Mr. Reeves, I'm not asking for immunity or protection or anything. I can't be part of this anymore. I can't watch another kid get hurt because I'm following orders." "The body camera footage, does it show the captain's radio order?" "Every word. All units stand down. Let HOA security handle their enforcement action. Do not intervene." Clear as day. Luis's voice went hollow. "And it shows me sitting in that car, watching your son bleed, doing nothing. That footage becomes evidence in a federal civil rights investigation. Good. Use it. Show the DOJ what's happening here. Show them how the board chair uses her husband's position to run Heritage Hills like her personal police state." He stood to leave, stopped. My daughter asked me yesterday if cops are good guys or bad guys. I didn't know how to answer. What did you tell her? That cops are supposed to be good guys, but sometimes they forget that, and when they do, someone has to remind them. He pushed the flash drive toward me. Remind them, Mr. Reeves, federally. Make sure this never happens to another kid. After he left, I sat there with a flash drive containing video evidence of police conspiracy and a notebook documenting 53 civil rights violations. The captain's wife thought her marriage protected her security force, thought coordination agreements legitimized their actions, thought $15,000 monthly payments bought police complicity. She didn't know one of those complicit officers just handed me everything the FBI needed to build a federal prosecution. I spent that night in my law office reviewing Officer Hernandez's body camera footage frame by frame. 12 years investigating police misconduct had taught me exactly what to look for. The footage opened with Luis and Officer Chen's patrol car pulling up to Heritage Hill's public sidewalk. Isaiah was skateboarding, 11 years old, no threat, no crime in progress. Jake Morrison stepped in front of him. Stop! Skateboarding prohibited in Heritage Hill's community areas. Isaiah's voice, young and trying to be polite. This is a public sidewalk, sir, not HOA property. Surrender the skateboard, now. I don't think you can take my skateboard on a public sidewalk. That's when Jake grabbed him. The body camera captured everything in brutal clarity. A grown man seizing an 11-year-old by the shoulders, spinning him around, slamming him face first onto concrete. The sound of Isaiah's face hitting pavement made me close my eyes. Isaiah's scream, his crying. Please, I didn't do anything wrong. Please. Jake putting a knee on Isaiah's back, handcuffing him, blood already, spreading on the concrete from his broken nose. Then the radio transmission. Captain Donovan's voice, clear and unmistakable. All units stand down. Let HOA security handle their enforcement action. Do not intervene. Repeat, do not intervene. Officer Chen's voice. Dispatch, we have a juvenile injured. He's bleeding. Captain's voice. Stand. Down. Heritage Hills Security has coordinated jurisdiction. The camera showed Luis and Chen sitting in their patrol car, 30 feet from a bleeding child, watching, doing nothing, following orders. 8 minutes of my son crying for help while officers who could have intervened sat frozen by their captain's command. I documented everything with timestamps. 3:47 p.m. Initial contact, Isaiah on public sidewalk. 3:48 p.m. Jake demands skateboard. Isaiah refuses. 3:49 p.m. Physical assault begins. 3:49:30 p.m. Isaiah slammed onto concrete. 3:50 p.m. Captain's stand down radio order. 3:51, 3:58 p.m. Isaiah handcuffed, bleeding, officers watching. 3:58 p.m. I arrive on scene federal civil rights case, documented minute by minute. I sent everything to Dana Williams at FBI headquarters. Body camera footage. Hernandez's notebook with 53 documented incidents. Patricia's coordination agreement. The $15,000 monthly payment records. Dana called within 2 hours. Marcus, I'm forwarding this directly to DOJ Civil Rights Division. This is everything. Police captain ordering officers not to help a bleeding child while his wife's security force commits assault. That's conspiracy under color of law. Pattern of 53 incidents? That's systematic constitutional violations. What's the timeline for federal intervention? DOJ is already reviewing. They'll want to interview Isaiah, Officer Hernandez, the other victim families. Subpoena records from Metro PD and Heritage Hills. This moves fast because there's clear federal interest and ongoing violations. I pulled up Hernandez's notebook, started mapping the other incidents. The Rodriguez garage search, The Kim family's detained teenager. 53 cases of Heritage Hills security acting under police protection. Each one a potential federal civil rights claim. Each one evidence of pattern and practice. Then I found something that made everything worse. 3 incidents where the former city councilwoman had specifically requested police run background checks on residents who'd challenged HOA enforcement. Patricia had used her husband's position to access confidential police databases for HOA purposes. That wasn't just corruption, that was federal privacy law violations, misuse of law enforcement information systems. I documented it all, every incident, every victim, every constitutional violation enabled by Captain Donovan's orders and his wife's coordination agreement. The case was building itself. Federal criminal charges, potential. Captain Robert Donovan, conspiracy to deprive civil rights, 18 U.S.C. 241. Jake Morrison, deprivation of rights under color of law, 18 U.S.C. 242. Patricia Donovan, conspiracy, aiding and abetting federal civil claims, 42. U.S.C. 1983, constitutional violations under color of law, Fourth Amendment, excessive force, unlawful seizures, pattern and practice violations triggering DOJ investigation evidence, body camera footage showing assault and stand-down order, 53 documented incidents of similar violations, financial records showing $15,000 monthly payments, coordination agreement between HOA and police misuse of police databases for HOA purposes, medical records documenting Isaiah's injuries, officer testimony about systematic orders to defer to HOA security. The board chair thought she'd built a legal security framework. She'd actually built a federal RICO case, ongoing criminal enterprise using police authority for private HOA enforcement. My phone buzzed. Email from DOJ. Mr. Reeves, Civil Rights Division, opening preliminary investigation into Metro PD and Heritage Hills coordination. Request meeting with you, Isaiah, and Officer Hernandez. Federal grand jury subpoenas being prepared. Grand jury, federal prosecutors, the machinery of federal civil rights enforcement activating. Patricia Donovan had no idea that her marriage to a police captain, the thing she thought protected her, was exactly what triggered federal jurisdiction. And I'd just handed the Department of Justice everything they needed to dismantle her entire operation. 2 weeks later, Isaiah and I sat in a Department of Justice conference room in Washington, D.C. Across the table, 3 DOJ Civil Rights Division attorneys, 2 FBI agents, and Dana Williams. The lead prosecutor, Assistant U.S. Attorney Sarah Chen, reviewed Isaiah's medical records with the careful attention of someone building a federal case. Isaiah, can you tell us what happened when the man in the vest stopped you? My son's voice was quiet, small. He said I had to give him my skateboard. I said it was a public sidewalk, and I didn't think HOA rules. Worked there. Then he grabbed me, spun me around. I felt my face hit the ground. It hurt really bad. Did you see the police officers? After, when I was on the ground, they were in their car. I asked them to help me. Isaiah's voice cracked. They didn't move. Sarah Chen documented everything, then showed Isaiah photos from other incidents. Kids detained, families confronted, all with police watching in the background. Do these situations look similar to what happened to you? Yeah, the security people doing stuff while cops just watch. After Isaiah's interview, I met with the DOJ team privately. Sarah spread 53 incident reports across the conference table, Hernandez's documented cases. Mr. Reeves, this is systematic. 53 documented incidents over 2 years where Metro PD officers were ordered to defer to HOA security. That's not isolated misconduct. That's departmental policy creating constitutional violations. Have you contacted the other victim families? We're starting outreach this week, but we need you to help identify them. Hernandez's notes have names and dates, but we need actual victims willing to cooperate. I pulled out my phone. I've already made preliminary contact with 6 families. The Rodriguez family, whose garage was illegally searched. The Kim family, whose teenager was detained for hours. 4 others who experienced excessive force or unlawful searches. Dana Williams leaned forward. Marcus, this is exactly what we need. Multiple victims. Pattern of police HOA coordination enabling rights violations. Financial incentives corrupting law enforcement. This case could result in a consent decree forcing Metro PD reform. What about criminal charges? Grand jury convenes next month. We're seeking indictments against Captain Donovan for conspiracy to deprive civil rights, Jake Morrison for assault under color of law, and we're considering charges against Patricia Donovan for her role in the conspiracy. The former city councilwoman was about to discover that federal prosecutors don't care about local political connections. That afternoon, DOJ served subpoenas on Metro Police Department and Heritage Hills HOA, demanding all records related to the coordination agreement, financial payments, incident reports, radio transmissions, body camera footage, and communications between Patricia and Captain Donovan. Patricia tried to quash the subpoenas, filed emergency motions claiming HOA privacy, attorney-client privilege, marital communications privilege. Federal judge denied every motion. The coordination agreement between Heritage Hills and Metro PD created a quasi-governmental enforcement regime. Constitutional protections apply. Discovery proceeds. The board chair's attorney called me the next day. Mr. Reeves, my client wishes to discuss settlement of your civil lawsuit. Tell your client to discuss it with the Department of Justice, because this isn't just my lawsuit anymore, it's a federal civil rights investigation. Mrs. Donovan was unaware that the security actions would be interpreted as constitutional violations. Mrs. Donovan signed a coordination agreement giving HOA security police backing. Then her husband ordered officers not to intervene when that security assaulted a child. She knew exactly what she was creating. Perhaps if we could arrange a meeting, the only meeting that matters is the one between your client and federal prosecutors. I spent the next week coordinating with the 6 victim families, helped them understand their rights, explained how federal civil rights law worked, connected them with DOJ attorneys. Mrs. Rodriguez, they searched our garage looking for code violations, no warrant, just walked in like they owned the place. Police were standing right there, told us we had to comply with HOA inspection. Mr. Kim, my son was 15. They handcuffed him and kept him in a locked room for 2 hours, called it administrative detention. When I demanded police help, they said it was an HOA matter. 4 more families, 4 more stories of constitutional violations enabled by police complicity. DOJ documented everything, built timelines, analyzed patterns, identified systemic failures. Then the subpoenaed records arrived, and they were devastating. Internal Metro PD emails showing Captain Donovan explicitly ordering officers to support Heritage Hills enforcement operations and defer to HOA security in all coordination zone incidents. Financial records showing the $15,000 monthly payments from HOA to police department labeled as Enhanced Community Safety Partnership. Text messages between Patricia and Captain Donovan discussing specific residents to target and how to utilize police resources for HOA enforcement. The tyrant in heels had documented her own conspiracy. Every text, every email, every payment, all preserved in official records now in federal prosecutors' hands. Sarah Chen called me after reviewing the documents. "Marcus, this is a slam dunk. Captain ordering systematic deference to HOA security, financial payments creating conflict of interest, text messages showing coordination to target specific residents. We have everything for both criminal prosecution and pattern and practice civil action. Timeline? Grand jury indictments within 60 days. Consent decree negotiations with Metro PD starting immediately. Your civil case proceeds in parallel." Federal machinery was moving, and nothing Patricia Donovan's local connections could do would stop it. The federal grand jury convened in Atlanta 6 weeks after DOJ opened its investigation. I wasn't allowed in the grand jury room, witnesses and prosecutors only, but I watched Officer Hernandez walk in to testify. He looked terrified, shoulders hunched, hands shaking. But he went in. Dana Williams updated me afterward. "He gave them everything. The stand-down orders, the 53 incidents, Captain Donovan's explicit instructions to defer to HOA security, the text messages he received telling him to support coordination operations." How did the grand jury react? They watched the body camera footage, saw your son get slammed onto concrete, heard the captain order officers not to help. Dana's voice was grim. 3 grand jurors were crying. 2 others wanted to know why this took so long to investigate. Because the captain's wife ran the HOA and local authorities buried complaints. That's exactly what the grand jury is hearing. Pattern of corruption, systematic civil rights violations, financial payments creating conflict of interest. She paused. "Marcus, the U.S. Attorney is seeking indictments against Captain Donovan, Jake Morrison, and Patricia Donovan within 2 weeks. Federal criminal charges, not local, not something Captain Donovan's position or Patricia's connections could make disappear." That afternoon, Metro PD placed Captain Donovan on administrative leave pending the federal investigation. His department email was deactivated. His access to police systems revoked. 22 years on the force, ended by federal subpoena. Patricia tried damage control. Called an emergency Heritage Hills board meeting to address false allegations being made against community security operations. I attended. So did the Rodriguez family, the Kims. 4 other families who'd experienced HOA security violence while police watched. The HOA president stood at the podium, still trying to project authority. These federal investigations are based on misunderstandings about our coordination agreement with Metro PD. Heritage Hills Security operates legally, professionally, and with full police support. Mrs. Rodriguez stood up. "Your security searched my garage without a warrant, while police officers stood there and told me I had to comply. That's not legal coordination. That's intimidation." Mr. Kim stood. "Your security handcuffed my 15-year-old son and locked him in a room for 2 hours, called it administrative detention. The police did nothing because your husband told them not to." 4 more families stood, each one sharing their story. Constitutional violations enabled by the board chair's coordination agreement and her husband's orders. Patricia's composure finally cracked. "I built this security program to protect property values and community safety. You built it to control residents using police power you didn't have." I stood from the back of the room. "And you did it by leveraging your marriage to a police captain, paying the police department $15,000 a month, and creating a coordination agreement while you were still on city council." That coordination was approved by proper authorities. It was approved by you when you were a city councilwoman. Then you became HOA president and used it to give your security force quasi-police powers. That's corruption, Patricia. Federal prosecutors call it conspiracy to deprive civil rights. The former city councilwoman gripped the podium. My husband's leave is temporary. Once Metro PD completes their review, Metro PD isn't conducting the review. The Department of Justice is. And they've already subpoenaed 2 years of records showing systematic orders to defer to HOA security. I pulled out my phone, showed her the DOJ press release that had gone out that morning. Federal grand jury is seeking indictments against you, your husband, and Jake Morrison, expected within 2 weeks. Patricia's face went white. Indictments? 18 U.S.C. Section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. 18 U.S.C. Section 241, conspiracy to violate civil rights, plus pattern and practice violations that'll result in a consent decree forcing Metro PD reform. I was protecting the community. You were running a private police force using your husband's position and public money. That's exactly what federal civil rights law was designed to stop. The board chair looked around the room at the families she'd victimized, at the community that had trusted her security program, at the empire built on marriage and corruption now crumbling under federal scrutiny. The board will meet in executive session to discuss legal strategy. The board is disbanding Heritage Hills Security immediately. The vice president stood. I move to terminate all security contracts, end the coordination agreement with Metro PD, and cooperate fully with federal investigators. Second, another board member said. All in favor? 4 hands. Only Patricia's remained down. Motion carries. Mrs. Donovan, Heritage Hills Public Safety Task Force is dissolved effective immediately. I left the meeting knowing the tyrant in heels had just lost her enforcement regime, lost her coordination agreement, lost the police protection her husband's position had provided. 2 weeks later, the indictments came. Federal criminal charges against all 3 defendants, and nothing Patricia's lawyers or local connections could do would stop a federal prosecution. The federal courthouse in Atlanta was packed, 200 people waiting for the arraignment hearing, victim families, Heritage Hills residents, media, civil rights organizations who'd been tracking the case. Isaiah sat beside me in the front row, watching federal marshals lead 3 defendants through a side door. Jake Morrison in handcuffs, the man who'd slammed my son onto concrete. Captain Robert Donovan in handcuffs, the police officer who'd ordered others to watch it happen. Patricia Donovan in handcuffs, the HOA president who'd built the entire corrupt system. The federal magistrate judge read the charges. Her voice was clinical, professional, but each word landed like a verdict. United States of America versus Robert Donovan, Patricia Donovan, and Jake Morrison. Count 1, conspiracy to deprive civil rights under color of law, 18 U.S.C. Section 241. Count 2, deprivation of rights under color of law, 18 U.S.C. Section 242. Counts 3 through 7, individual acts of constitutional violations. 15 total counts, each one carrying up to 10 years in federal prison. Patricia's attorney stood. Your Honor, my client was unaware that the security coordination constituted. Your client signed a coordination agreement while serving as city councilwoman, then used it as HOA president to give private security quasi-police powers. She exchanged text messages with her husband about targeting specific residents. She paid Metro PD $180,000 over 2 years, creating financial conflict of interest. The magistrate judge looked over her glasses. Mrs. Donovan knew exactly what she was creating. The coordination was approved by proper authorities. By your client, when she was the authority. That's corruption, counsel. Motion denied. The former city councilwoman stood at the defense table, hands cuffed in front of her, watching her carefully constructed system collapse under federal scrutiny. The prosecutor, Sarah Chen, stood to address the court. Your Honor, the United States has additional announcements. First, Metro Police Department has entered into consent decree negotiations with the Department of Justice. The consent decree will require independent monitoring, policy reforms, and prohibition of coordination agreements between police and private HOA security forces. Second, Officer Luis Hernandez of Metro PD is cooperating fully with federal investigators. His testimony and body camera evidence were instrumental in securing these indictments. The United States recommends no charges against Officer Hernandez in exchange for his continued cooperation. I saw Luis in the back of the courtroom, relief flooding his face. His conscience had cost him his career at Metro PD, but it had saved him from federal prosecution. Third, 6 additional victim families have come forward documenting similar constitutional violations. The United States is investigating potential additional charges for pattern of civil rights deprivation. The magistrate set bail, $250,000 for Captain Donovan, $150,000 for Patricia, $100,000 for Jake Morrison. Trial is set for 6 months from today. Defendants are prohibited from contact with Heritage Hills residents or any witnesses. Captain Donovan is prohibited from any law enforcement activities. Mrs. Donovan is prohibited from any HOA governance or security operations. As federal marshals led them away, Patricia looked back at the courtroom full of families she'd victimized, at the community she'd controlled through fear and police corruption, at the enforcement regime now dismantled by federal intervention. Outside the courthouse, Sarah Chen held a press conference. Today's indictments send a clear message. HOAs cannot use coordination agreements with police to bypass constitutional protections. Private security forces cannot act under color of law without being subject to the same constitutional constraints as police officers. And police departments cannot defer to private security when civil rights are being violated. She gestured to the victim families standing behind her. These families trusted their local police to protect them. Instead, they watched officers stand by while HOA security committed assault, conducted illegal searches, and detained children, all because an HOA president married to a police captain created a corrupt coordination system. The Department of Justice will continue investigating police HOA corruption nationwide. Any similar coordination agreements creating constitutional violations will face federal scrutiny. Mrs. Rodriguez stepped forward. My family has lived in Heritage Hills for 8 years. We watched this community transform from a neighborhood into a police state run by the board chair and her husband. We thought we were powerless. Then Mr. Reeves showed us that federal law protects us even when local police won't. Mr. Kim spoke next. My son was 15 when HOA security handcuffed him and locked him in a room. Police officers watched and did nothing. Today, those same people are facing federal charges. That's justice. Isaiah tugged my sleeve. Dad, is it over? The criminal case is just starting. But yeah, buddy, the part where they could hurt people, that's over. The tyrant in heels had built her empire on marriage to a police captain, coordination agreements, and $15,000 monthly payments. Federal prosecutors had dismantled it with indictments, consent decrees, and constitutional law that didn't care about local connections. 8 months later, I stood on the public sidewalk where Isaiah had been assaulted. The same concrete where he'd bled from a broken nose while police officers watched. But today was different. Today, Isaiah was skateboarding. 12 years old now, nose healed, shoulder recovered. Still cautious around authority figures, still in therapy working through the trauma, but skating. The federal trial had ended 3 months ago. Patricia Donovan pleaded guilty to conspiracy to deprive civil rights, sentenced to 18 months in federal prison. Captain Robert Donovan pleaded guilty to deprivation of rights under color of law. 2 years federal prison, stripped of his pension, barred from law enforcement. Jake Morrison went to trial. Jury deliberated for 90 minutes before convicting on all counts. 3 years federal prison for assault under color of law. The former city councilwoman had tried to negotiate, offered to cooperate, testify, provide evidence against her husband in exchange for probation. Federal prosecutors refused. You built this system, Mrs. Donovan. You used your position as councilwoman to create the coordination agreement. You married a police captain and used his authority. You paid $180,000 to corrupt a police department. You personally ordered targeting of residents who challenged you. There is no deal. Metro Police Department operated under federal consent decree. Now, independent monitor. Strict policies prohibiting coordination with private HOA security. Officers required to intervene when witnessing civil rights violations regardless of who commits them. Financial relationships between HOAs and police departments banned. Heritage Hills had new leadership. The security force disbanded. The coordination agreement voided. Families could plant gardens, let their kids play, skateboard on public sidewalks without fear of armed enforcement. Officer Luis Hernandez worked as a youth counselor now. Left Metro PD after the investigation. Used his experience, the guilt, the complicity, the redemption, to teach kids about standing up to corruption even when it's hard. He'd stopped by last week, apologized to Isaiah directly. I should have helped you that day. I'm sorry I didn't, but I'm trying to make sure other cops don't make the same choice I did. Isaiah had looked at him for a long moment. Then, you helped eventually. You gave my dad the evidence. The 6 victim families had settled their civil cases. Monetary damages, acknowledgement of constitutional violations, reforms ensuring it never happened again. My case, Reeves vs. Donovan, resulted in $450,000 settlement, but more importantly, it created legal precedent. Federal courts ruling that HOA police coordination agreements creating quasi-governmental enforcement trigger constitutional protections. Any similar arrangements nationwide now faced federal scrutiny. Keisha would have been proud. She'd spent her life fighting for police accountability, believing the system could change if enough people demanded it. She died before seeing federal intervention in police corruption. But Isaiah's case, the federal prosecution, the consent decree, the precedent protecting other communities, that was the change she'd fought for. "Dad, watch this," Isaiah ollied over a crack in the sidewalk. The public sidewalk, city property where HOA authority ended and constitutional protections began. The boundary the tyrant in heels had tried to erase with coordination agreements and police corruption. The boundary federal law had restored. I watched my son skate, free, protected, safe in a way he hadn't been 8 months ago when police officers watched him get slammed onto this same concrete. The skateboard Keisha had bought him, confiscated as contraband, eventually returned after federal investigators seized it as evidence, rolled smoothly over pavement that had once been stained with his blood. Patricia Donovan had built an empire through marriage, money, and corruption. Thought local connections made her untouchable. Thought coordination agreements gave her security force real authority. Thought police would always protect her because she was married to a captain. She'd learned that federal civil rights law doesn't recognize local power structures, that constitutional protections exist precisely to check corrupt alliances between public and private authority, that when local police fail to protect citizens, federal intervention makes them answer for it. Other communities were watching, other HOAs with coordination agreements, other police departments taking money from private security forces, all of them learning that Heritage Hill's federal prosecution wasn't isolated. It was a template. Isaiah skated past me, smiling, finally healing, finally free. If you want more stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe right now, share your story in the comments, and let me know where you're watching from. Because federal accountability works, and communities deserve protection from corrupt authority, whether that authority wears an HOA badge or a police uniform.